Good morning and welcome to African Union Television News, 29th of January 2026. My name is Kwasi Amankwah Agyekum. Coming up, a RECSEC sent home 900 Nobisco students after dormitory fire. Daylight armed robbery rocks Yasu Gold Shop. If NDC wants to drag me back to court, who am I to say no, Pandai MP? Minority calls for withdrawal of vacancy notices on Pandai seat after Supreme Court ruling. Good and happy about local cargo insurance directive. Africa must pursue its own interest in collapsing global order, say some Jonah. Just admit you've lost, Pandai, John Darko tells NDC, over review hands. And GJA petitions IGP over escalating threats to journalists in Boko conflict. The details. The Northern Regional Security Council, RECSEC, led by Regional Minister Haji Ali Adolf Chon, has ordered a partial closure of the Northern School of Business, Nobisco, following a fire that destroyed the girls' dormitory on Wednesday afternoon. As part of a phased relocation plan, our second-year students have been directed to go home. Third-year students who were heavily affected will also go home. Remaining third-year students will be accommodated in the second-year dormitory. The fire gutted dormitories housing students from Agri, Atha, Ali, and Bewa houses, destroying beds, books, uniforms, and other personal belongings. About 900 students were displaced. No casualties were recorded as the fire occurred while students were in class, though some reportedly rushed back to retrieve belongings. Authorities are now focusing on temporary accommodation, investigating the cause of the fire, and planning remediation ahead of students' phased return. A gang of 5 armed robbers carried out a daring daylight raid on a gold shop in Dasu, Upper Denchira West District, Central Region, making off with gold valued at over 80 billion Ghana cedis and a pickup vehicle. The Aunews News affiliate reporter with Rich 1 FM 96.3 reported that the attack occurred on market day when the area was crowded with traders and residents. The robbers arrived in a vehicle with 4 of them storming the shop while one stayed outside firing warning shots with an AK-47 and a sidearm to intimidate onlookers. The gunfire caused panic, forcing many people to flee. After the robbery, the suspects escaped with the gold and a pickup truck, leaving behind the vehicle used in the attack. And Niama reports that police have arrested 1 suspect, while the remaining 4 are still at large. The incident has left residents and traders in shock, particularly as Dasu is a well-known mining community. Some community members reportedly gathered at the police station demanding custody of the arrested suspects. Member of Parliament for Pandai Matthew Nyindam says the National Democratic Congress is free to seek a review of the Supreme Court ruling that reinstated him, but insists the decision is firm and cannot be overturned. Speaking on Joy FM's top story on Wednesday, Mr. Nyindam said he is unfazed by the NDC's indication that it may pursue further legal action. He maintained that he won the 2024 parliamentary election by nearly 4,000 votes and was unnecessarily taken to court. According to him, the Supreme Court has now affirmed his victory, ruling that the case against him was filed out of time, leading to his reinstatement as MP. Mr. Nyindam said while he respects the right of the NDC to explore legal options, he remains confident the Apex Court's ruling is solidly grounded in law. I am a law-abiding citizen, but I'm very sure that what the Supreme Court has done cannot be overturned because the law is the law, he stated. He added that all issues raised by the NDC were fully argued before the court and carefully considered by the justices, who subsequently delivered a majority decision in his favor. The NDC has earlier insisted that the Supreme Court's decision does not mark the end of the legal process surrounding the Pandai 2024 parliamentary election, suggesting that constitutional avenues remain open. The minority in parliament has called for the immediate withdrawal of all administrative notices or actions, suggesting that the Pandai parliamentary seat is vacant, following a decisive Supreme Court ruling reinstating Matthew Ndam as the duly elected member of parliament. In a statement welcoming the Apex Court's decision, the minority said all parliamentary and electoral commission records must be updated to reflect the legal reality that Mr. Ndam remains the NP for Pandai. On Wednesday, January 28, the Supreme Court, by judgment, which had annulled the 2024 parliamentary election and ordered a rerun, the court ruled that election petition was filed outside the district statutory timelines, thereby stripping the High Court of jurisdiction. According to the minority, the ruling reaffirms the supremacy of the Constitution, the importance of due process, and the principle of electoral finality in Ghana's democracy. The effect of this ruling is that there will be no rerun in Pandai and that Honorable Matthew Ndam remains in law and, in fact, the duly elected member of parliament, the statement said. The minority cautioned that no institution has the authority to rewrite electoral rules after a winner has been duly declared and gazetted, stressing that any action based on petition filed outside the legally mandated time frame is null and void. Beyond the immediate withdrawal of vacancy-related notices, the minority urged Speaker Alban S.K. Bagmin to lead an internal parliamentary review to prevent similar situations in the future, particularly where declarations of vacancy are made while appeals or applications for stay are still pending before the courts. They also called on all sides of the House to respect the hierarchy of courts and await final judicial outcomes before taking actions that could permanently affect parliamentary representation. The minority court cited past precedents, including the Abu Dhabi, Sakandi, Nimakan, and Kwasi cases, where restraints was exercised until all legal processes were exhausted, describing the Supreme Court ruling as a landmark decision that protects democratic choice and restores the mandate given by the people of Mandai. The Ghana Union of Traders Association GUTA has expressed strong disapproval of the government's unilateral decision to implement a local cargo insurance directive without adequate consultation with stakeholders. In a statement signed by Secretary General Richard Amano on January 28, 2026, GUTA raised concerns over the imposition of mandatory insurance services on businesses, incomplete stakeholder engagement, and the limited competitiveness and track record of local insurers. GUTA warned that penalizing businesses for not insuring locally is unfair, especially when local insurance providers may lack sufficient capacity or experience to handle such responsibilities effectively. The association has called on the National Insurance Commission and other relevant authorities to halt the directive's implementation and engage stakeholders meaningfully to address these concerns. Ghanaian statesman and businessman says Sam Jonah has called on African leaders to abandon economic difference and aggressively pursue the continent's own interests, warning that failure to do so could leave Africa dangerously exposed in a rapidly changing global order. Delivering the keynote address at the African Trade Summit 2026, Sam said, "The era of a predictable rules-based global economic system is effectively over, with economic power increasingly being used as a weapon through tariffs, supply chains, and trade restrictions." Citing warnings from global leaders, he argued that Africa often bears the brunt of these disruptions despite contributing the least to global instability. This is the moment for Africa to be selfish, unapologetic, boldly selfish in pursuing our interests, he declared. Some urged African governments to focus on local value creation, fairer trade terms, and continental unity rather than seeking external approval. He stressed that such selfishness must translate into job creation, industrial expansion, and wealth retention with Africa instead of continued dependence on raw material exports. John Darko, legal counsel for Matthew Nyendam, has urged the National Democratic Congress NDC to accept the Supreme Court's decision reinstating his client as Member of Parliament for Kwandai, cautioning that any attempt to seek a review is unlikely to succeed. Speaking on Joy News, The Pulse on Wednesday, Mr. Darko said he was surprised by comments from NDC Majority Chief Whip Roxanne Nelson Efiamapo, suggesting the party may pursue a review of the ruling. According to him, the threshold for admitting the Supreme Court review is extremely high, and the NDC does not meet the required legal standard. They should just admit that they lost this one, and let's all work together to build our country, he said. His remarks come after the NDC maintained that the Supreme Court's decision does not bring finality to the legal dispute over the 2024 Kwandai parliamentary election, insisting that constitutional and legal options remain open. Addressing whether a possible review poses any threat to Mr. Nyendam's mandate, Mr. Darko dismissed the suggestion, saying his client is not threatened by further legal action. Absolutely not at all. We are not threatened. In fact, I know that if they won't file it, they know that it is just going against time, he stated. Mr. Darko explained that a review application must demonstrate a serious miscarriage of justice, such as the court's failure to consider critical statutory provisions of the existence of a jurisdictional precedent setting error. Unless you can prove any of this, there's no way the court will even give the opportunity, he added. The Ghana Journalists Association (GJ) has warned of escalating threats against journalists reporting on the protracted Boko conflict, describing the situation as a serious danger to press freedom, public order, and national security. Addressing a press conference, GJ President Albert Jomfo said the association is gravely alarmed by death threats, incitement to violence, and imminent attack threats targeting journalists in the Upper East region, particularly the Upper East Regional Chairman of the GJ, Albert Sori, over their professional work. These threats are reckless, criminal, and deeply dangerous, not only to the lives of journalists, but also to public order and national security, Mr. Jumfo stated. He said journalists covering the Boko conflict have been openly labeled as enemies, subjected to coordinated online abuse, and threatened through social media posts, voice notes, and other digital platforms. He warned that the climate of fear and intimidation could escalate into mob violence if urgent action is not taken. The GJA president disclosed that the association has received a detailed report from Mr. Sori, explaining how a routine journalistic engagement was deliberately misrepresented by faceless and pseudonymous actors to incite hostility and issue explicit death threats against him and other media practitioners. Mr. Jomfo noted that similar threats have previously been directed at journalists covering the conflict, describing it as a disturbing and recurring pattern aimed at silencing the media. While acknowledging some engagement with the Upper East Regional Police Command, the GJA said the persistence of threats indicates that current security measures are inadequate. The association is therefore demanding sustained police protection, expedited investigations, and the arrest and prosecution of all individuals and the networks involved in issuing threats of inciting violence. Any harm to a journalist in the course of duty, particularly where prior threats have been reported, would represent a grave failure of protection and accountability, Mr. Jumfo warned. He further revealed that the National Executive of the GJA has formally petitioned the Inspector General of Police, IGP, calling for urgent intervention, reaffirming that journalists are performing a constitutional duty in the national interest. The GJA has designated the Boko conflict area as an early warning zone for press safety, urging heightened vigilance, proactive security deployment, and continuous engagement with journalists on the ground. Mr. Jomfo stressed that the association will not accept a reactive approach, warning that any attack on a journalist in the Upper East region would trigger sustained national and international advocacy until accountability is achieved. Before we go to the top stories again, RISEC sent home 900 Nobisco students after dormitory fire. Daylight armed robbery rocks Yasu Gold Shop. If NDC wants to drag me back to court, who am I to say no, Bandai MP? Minority calls for withdrawal of vacancy notices on Bandai seat after Supreme Court ruling. Guta unhappy about local cargo insurance directive. Africa must pursue its own interest in collapsing global order, says Sam Jonah. Just admit you've lost Bandai John Dakutel's NDC over review hands. GJ petitions IGP over escalating threats to journalists in Boko conflict. That ends African Union News. Us is up next with DK Wentz and James